You said that what he wanted was more money.
Yeah.
When you're trying to understand how to get someone to do what you want to do, what are the sort of core components of that? I spoke to Andrew Bustamante, who's the former CIA agent, and he said he spent a lot of time undercover doing very similar work, going to foreign countries, getting people to like him, to trust him, and then to give him something. And one of the things he said to me is you need to understand their ideology. He says of all the things that make someone do something is understanding their ideology, which is kind of what you're describing there. I think there's ideology, and the other thing, he said this framework, RICE, reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. And what you described, I guess, is the reward that Russian guy wanted. When you're thinking about how to get someone to do what you want, what's the kind of framework? Where do you default to? And here I'm thinking about business. I'm thinking about sales. I'm thinking about all forms of persuasion, because that's essentially what you had to do. You had to get this total stranger, sounds like a stranger, onto a private jet and to come with you to America.
So I'm going to shut up because I need to understand what you want. The biggest mistake people make is they talk a lot. Stephen, if I'm doing all the talking and you're doing all the listening, right? You're learning everything about me. You're learning about what I care about, my values, my belief systems. You're getting a good read on me. And I'm learning nothing about you. There's a myth that people think if I do most of the talking, I have control. It's garbage. You have the power because you've got me now. So what I will tell you is, and I know of Andy, what you want to understand is that person's motivational mindset. What are you motivated by? So that is your value and belief system. Everybody's motivated by something different, but I have to hear you and pay attention to you to understand what that is. Everybody's purpose is different. The example I gave you with the Russian, he's motivated by money.
How did you figure that out? Was there a certain question, or was it just...
One, his action showed it because he wants money. And then in talking to him, I believe he had a wife home. He had a kid home. He grew up a certain way. So you just listen. Here, have a drink. Talk to me. Let me know. If you give people enough space, they will reveal themselves to you. But we're so busy talking. We're so busy making noise because we think everybody needs to hear me. I'm identity. Everybody needs to know me, 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 me. And you know what? Nobody cares.
Is there something in that as well where when you listen to someone, they like you more?
Yeah, they like you more because everybody loves to talk about themselves because everybody wants to feel heard. Now, I'll tell you this, though. I'm going to push back on the little bit of the like thing because even in business, people are like, I need people to like me. I need people to like me. That is a trek for disaster because now you're focused on not what your goal is, but I need to make somebody like me. Those are two different animals. If my goal is to do a deal with you, then I'm going to focus on what do I need to get this deal done. If my goal is to get you to like me, which is much more complex and much more confusing, and also it's going to mess me up in trying to figure that out, I say this. Don't focus on making people like you because you can do everything right and people may still just not like you. Instead, focus on how about I'm going to be competent in what I do. When I say I'm going to do something, I follow through. When I say I can do something, I actually can do it. When I say I'm going to be there at 9, I'm there at 8:55. In the U.S. Secret Service, we had a saying, if you're on time, you're late. So I show you that I'm competent. When you see that, are you going to like me for that? Yes, you are.
I'll respect you.
Now, there's warmth. Warmth is the other element here. Warmth is, I show you respect. So instead of me trying to get you to like me, how about I just show you respect?
What does that look like in reality, showing someone respect? Is that, again, the timekeeping?
I'm listening to you. I show up on time. I follow through with what I say I'm going to do. I'm also open and approachable. I'm also non-judgmental. That's a big thing. Everybody's kind of like throwing their weight around. Let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you what I think. Nobody needs to know what you think. It doesn't matter. If you're really trying to build a connection with a person, then build it and let them tell you what they think. Because now I see the world through your lens, not mine. I always say especially I do a lot of keynotes and training for businesses, you don't matter, they matter. What do they want? What do they need? What's important to them? Let them tell you. And then when they tell you, instead of trying to guess how to enter a conversation, because you're coming in the blind, but what do? I shut up, I listen, I let you reveal to me what matters to you, what your values are, and then I come in more intelligently into the conversation and I speak to you. You have to know your audience, but you don't know your audience if you're doing all the talking. Everybody's motivated by something different. If you take my motivational factor growing up, I was never motivated by money. My Russian was greed. That's fair. But I wasn't. Whenever I got a job, I never looked at the pay. NYPD, I had no idea what my salary was. When I went to the U.S. Secret Service, I never once asked them, what's the pay? Because I wasn't motivated by that. I was motivated by the mission, by the purpose. But people will show you that. So the recruiter that talked to me probably realized this woman never once asked me what her salary is going to be. She's not motivated by that. Those are little things that people show you. People will show you what they care about if we just hold back, stay silent, ask good questions, and you know what? We're genuinely curious. I genuinely want to get to know you. I genuinely want to understand you. I don't genuinely want to tell you all about me. That's different. And the one factor that's really important is not having judgment, being non-judgmental. When you show judgment to another person, they're going to filter what they say, they're going to shut down, they're going to hold back because nobody likes to be judged. I would interview in the polygraph room people who committed really horrible crimes against children. A lot of people would say to me, how can you sit there and listen to it and not, tell them what you thought or not like ream them out? I was like, because my goal was to get information, to see where there are other victims. How did they do it? I want to know what they did so that I can make sure that this doesn't happen again and that I do maybe get information so I can get a conviction. And then I also want to know if there are other victims out there. My goal is not to check somebody and put him in his place or her and tell them what I think of them. Those are two different things. Also in the room, my goal was not to get them to like me. My goal was to get them to feel heard, to feel respected, for me to be professional. And I think we bring the wrong terms because it's confusing. If I want you to like me too, think of it this way, then I'm going to think I have to be nice to him. I have to be his friend. And when you're in business, you can be warm, but when you start becoming people's friends, that's when the lines get blurred and we get confused. And in fact, there's research done by Susan Fisk and Chris Malone, and they say, be warm to people, be open and approachable. But if you're overly nice, overly kind, overly polite, that's when you get rolled. You want to find that beautiful balance where I'm a professional, I'm warm, I'm non-judgmental, come talk to me, tell me. But at the same time, I maintain my authority, I maintain my boundaries.
What about when someone compromises your boundaries or disrespects you? How do you react to that? Because I think I have a lot of leaders around me in my various businesses, and I see sometimes that some leaders struggle with confrontation. They struggle with, a team member might disrespect them in some way or might not deliver work to the right standard. And they might struggle with like pulling that person in, knowing how to do that and how to address that situation. And the avoidance of that conflict obviously just causes a bigger future problem because you're setting a new boundary, right? You've let someone jeopardize or cross a line. And if you don't, I'm assuming that if in the moment you don't address that, they're going to cross it again in the future. This is really about like conflict resolution, interpersonal conflict resolution. And when you've been disrespected, how do you deal with that?
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it back. What have you done to let people think that they can do that to you? That's the first thing I'm going to say. What standards have you created or what things have you set up to let people think, I don't have to deliver on time. I can't be disrespectful. I can't show up late for work. That's the first thing I'm going to say.
So I would hazard a guess that I in the past set a standard for this.
Right.
Or in some way that I showed up in the past.
That's the first thing I'm going to do. Is there something I have done to create an environment where a person thinks that it is okay to do these things? That's first.
Why do you go to I?
Because I'm the one who sets the tone. I just interviewed a former chief of station, John Franchi. He's former CIA. And he managed a lot of people and a lot of strong personalities because you got officers and all these different people. And he said to me, you know what I learned? He said, it is easier to have boundaries and be a little bit more sturdy and more authoritative in the beginning and then pull back than to be everybody's friend and then try to put those boundaries in place. The latter doesn't work. He's like, you do the first, you let people know what you expect of them, and then you can pull back a little bit. But you always have to toe that line. So that's what I'm going to say first, and he's right. What tone have I set in the environment that I'm working that people think it's okay to do these things? That's one. Now, let's say sometimes I have an outlier. I have a person who does these things. As soon as it happens, you have to address it. What people do is they don't address things, they let it go. It's small, and then it happens again. It's small, then again, and then we become resentful. We become pissed. Why does this person keep doing it? Why don't they self-correct? Again, it goes back to me. Why haven't I addressed it? People are afraid of conflict. Conflict can be done in a great way. You have to think of conflict as, think of it as like I'm competing. I can speak to you, not raise my voice, not make it ugly, and debate something with you. In the White House, next to the Oval Office was the cabinet room. The cabinet room is where the president would sit with all his heads, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Homeland Security, and they would discuss and debate policies, laws, and they would compete. One person would say, I don't like this idea, this is why. Another person would say, well, this idea doesn't work, this is why. You have to be comfortable in doing that. Most people are not. They don't understand that you can sit somebody down and say, hey, this happened, can you tell me about that? I had someone who worked for me and she had made a mistake on something. And so it was a pretty big mistake. So I called her up and I said, hey, you know what, this and this happened, talk me through it. And I let her explain and, she said, I'm sorry, this and that, there's a reason why. But the one thing I did, I said, because I wanted to rectify it, because I didn't want it to happen again, I was like, is there anything I can do to help make your job better so you can be more successful at what you do? Because I want to hear, is there something I'm doing or not doing that's impacting her decision-making or the way she sees things? So it's a twofold. But you also, too, when it comes to respect, and this is a whole separate thing you brought up, with the respect part, just make sure people are truly disrespecting you and that's not your ego that feels disrespected. Because sometimes people can't take somebody pushing back. And if my goal is to make a great product or business deal or transaction, then everything we do should be in furtherance of that. But what happens is, Stephen, people are so afraid of hurting other people's feelings or stepping on other people's toes. Nobody says something, and that's worse.